Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Kind Regards podcast. I am your host, Zamiwe Mwape, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. We're sitting down with none other than Komba Malukutila, who, aside from being one of the coolest CEOs online, is an excellent leader and the multiple award-winning CEO of MTN Zambia Fintech. He was most recently awarded the Banking and Finance Fintech CEO of the Year award. In this episode, we get to know more about the man behind the achievements. We chat about everything from the meaning of his name to his journey from college student, which happens to be when I met him, by the way, to CEO, which according to him stands for Chief Energy Officer. We dig into his leadership style, the importance of failure, and his secret to creating a non-toxic work environment that empowers people and allows team members to be their authentic selves. Honestly, you're in for a treat because this episode is packed with insights that will leave you inspired. Komba, welcome to the show.
Hey Zam, how are you doing? It's really nice to be on the Kind Regards podcast today. So thank you so much for having me and just looking forward to our chat, however short it will be.
However long it will be, because I have so many things. I have so many things I want to hear and learn from you.
Oh, wow.
No, it's true. It's true. So yeah, we'll start off with some icebreakers. What does your name mean? Because I've never met another Komba in my life.
I actually get this one quite often. So my full name is actually Komba Lume, but everybody calls me Komba because that Komba Lume is a mouthful. But Komba Lume is actually a Lamba name, and it was given to me by my grandmother. She's late. And the meaning of Komba Lume is the great leader or lead will follow. It is normally bestowed upon firstborns of a family, and it's really in hopes that the firstborn is going to lead by example so that the household can follow through his footsteps.
I think that's actually a fitting name. I didn't expect it to be so tied into how I perceive you. That's lovely. Komba, you travel quite a bit.
I do.
What's a place you haven't been to yet that you want to visit? What's on your list?
Sure, there are quite a number. So top of the list, and if I could magically appear anywhere on the planet, would be Japan. There is something amazing about the Japanese people. I really want to understand their secrets around longevity, around happiness, living a whole lot more fulfilled. I think that for such a tech-forward country, they have such a balanced focus on life. And I want to understand how they attain that work-life balance, be so ahead in terms of progress, but in the same breath, also manage to focus on a quality life. The second one is Nigeria. I've never been to Nigeria, but it is one of the most economically booming countries on our continent. I've interacted with Nigerians, and every time you interact with a Nigerian, and you will also agree to that, is that they're so forward, so aggressive. So I can only imagine how much energy is in Lagos, with a city full of just them. I would want to just draw from that. Another one that I haven't been to that I definitely would love to visit is Canada. I think that the Canadians also have managed to be so successful in what they do. Again, I like to go to countries to go and experience energies, because locations will always be locations, but the energy in Canada must be very forward because they have managed to create such a booming economy that now they want so many foreigners in Canada to come and consume from that economy. They don't have enough people to consume what they have created. I don't envy the cold, but I definitely want to visit Canada to just go and experience how forward they are as a country.
Very interesting list. I agree with 2 out of those 3. For Japan, I would say it seems like such a different place, very forward, like you have said. But aside from their lifestyle, and I guess mine is a bit more of a shallow reason, they seem to really be fashion forward. Like when I see videos, even like elderly people will be like in fashion forward clothing. And I'm like, that's really dope. So like, I would love to experience their technological advancements as well as to see the fashion. Nigeria, I agree. And I've always said I would love to visit Nigeria, but I don't know if I could work in Nigeria because I think it requires so much of you because of how forward and aggressive they are. Like I was even thinking about it this morning. I'm like, those people are special, wherever you go in the world, the confidence they have.
They survive anywhere. You know what I mean?
Anywhere.
And thrive. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And for such a community-based approach, because Nigerians will quickly identify each other wherever they are, and they start to put each other on so quick. So for me, that is so top tier.
And then the last one is, you seem like such a disciplined person. And I think I speak on behalf of the people when I say we want to know, what is your morning routine?
Oh, that's very interesting. So believe it or not, I only picked up a fitness lifestyle a little over 3 years ago. And it's when I also picked up my CEO role. I knew that being in such an intense environment, I needed to create structures that would help me cope with how hectic working in an environment like that would be. So speaking into my morning routine, I'm up religiously by 4:15 every day. I spend the first 15 minutes in just solitude, no movement, and just, again, connecting with myself, being grateful that the day has just started. You know what I mean? And I'm a part of it. And that reaffirmation and validation that I belong to the day that I've been waking up to just validates me a whole lot more. So I put myself on, I pep myself up, and I talk to God and all the nice things that can happen in that first 15 minutes of the day, but in that day, it's mano a mano. It's me versus me. By 4:30, I'm up, I'm packing my gym bag, I'm getting ready. I'm out of the house by 5 o'clock. I'm in the gym. I dedicate at least an hour and 30 minutes to my workout. And when I go in the gym, I go hard. I enjoy being in that space and just dedicating not only to my body, but also to my mind. And it's the first step of discipline that I take. And it's there where things are tough, but you keep on doing it. And that's what adulting is all about. It's about triumph over difficulty, but knowing that in order for you to see results, you cannot go around it. You have to go through the fire and come out on the other side. And that's probably what I'll be tackling for the rest of my day, overcoming challenges. And sometimes they even bring you down. And so true to the gym, sometimes you pick up a weight, and you just can't lift it. So you have to drop it.
It humbles you.
You know what I mean? Literally, you fall on your back. You have injuries in there. And so not all days are rosy. So I'm not to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the gym, but some days I just go there and I'm just like, today has been a mess. I came to listen to music, but it's all part of progress. But the discipline of not giving up is what's also just critical. And that's it. And my day starts just like any other average Joe. And I go through ups and downs until eventually I retire back and repeat.
I love it. So let's get into the detailed discussion. Who is Komba, the person, the professional, and everything in between?
Oh, that's a nice question, Zamiwe, and I just like how you asked it. So, sure, Komba is a work in progress. I come from the Copper Belt. I'm originally born and bred in Chingol. I lived in pretty much all Copper Belt towns, with the exception of Mufulira, but lived in each and every town. And I have got a typical African story. I grew up in the struggle and worked my way out of that environment to where I am today. It was a slow process because of difficulty, but I also had a lot of structures, African structures. And if you know African structures, then you know that it took a village to bring me to where I am, to when we eventually met in college. By the time you were meeting the lanky, talkative, ambitious guy on campus, I had already been through a lot of thick and thin, and I was only happy to just be there at Zikers amongst the elite. Because if you grew up in Lusaka in the 2000s, then you knew that just being at Zikers, you were amongst the elite. And the world owed me nothing, So being there for me was just so much gratitude. To be amongst cool people like you, I was just in so much awe. I originally was to be a lawyer. I really wanted to study law, but I couldn't get a scholarship into UNZA in the School of Humanities. So I figured out what would I do that would compensate for that qualification that I yearned for so bad. And so I figured out that outside law, my other passion was tech. And tech would be what would take over the world. And as millennials, there was just so much curiosity about how much impact it would have on the world. And so I said, look, I can't be a lawyer, but there is one qualification that I know that is a foundation of all qualifications, and that would be to pursue tech. And so I got into Zikas, applied for a scholarship there. They could only grant me 50%. And I said, look, I'm going to run with this 50%, and the rest of the 50%, I would work and do school at the same time to be able to sustain my education. And that's what I did. And I got out of that, luckily managed to graduate, managed to get out of there in record time. I didn't have a lot of chances, I needed to get it right the first time because I didn't have a silver spoon or a bucket of money sitting somewhere or a sponsor sitting somewhere waiting to pay for my mistakes. So I had to get it right the first time. It was crunch time for me. And that's how I remember it. And getting out of there, I worked for one or two small organizations before I eventually landed at MTN, which would be a good foundation for work where tech was concerned. And I've worked there ever since. 15 years this year, started as an intern in that organization and worked my way up to the CEO that you've come to know today. And for me, CEO doesn't stand for Chief Executive Officer. For me, CEO stands for Chief Energy Officer, but we'll talk about that in a little while.
Oh, wow. First of all, I just want to touch on what you've mentioned around how you ended up at Zika's, meeting cool people such as yours truly.
With your cool swag, jeans, and t-shirt swag every day.
That's why I'm like, why is Komba telling lies?
Listen,
I was not cool.
you were cool. You were such a tomboy, by the way, but cool. You know, I mean,
I was.
between books and music, you were so...
Yeah. Why, thank you. Honestly, from the outside looking in, would have had no idea that that was your background for a couple of reasons. A, if I were to describe you as a color, I would describe you as yellow. You were such a wall of sunshine, positive energy, nice to everyone you came across. And I think when you're in college, that's a time when a lot of us are discovering ourselves. Sometimes you don't feel like you belong. I never got a sense of any insecurity. Now, you haven't said you did, but I imagine that sometimes if you're coming from a different background than some of the people you're around, you would either have an insecurity vibe or like a chip on your shoulder. Definitely never got that from you. I had no idea that you were actually sponsoring yourself and working. What kind of work were you doing at the time?
This is going to interest you, Zamiwe. Zika's had both full-time and part-time students when we're there. So how I earned money being a full-time student is tutoring part-time students during the evening. So when everybody would retire back to their rooms, the mature students who were working students like the way you and me are today would have a lot of
I know.
work on their shoulders. And so I would offer my services to assist them with assignments and tutor them through missed classes and lectures and help them with coursework and projects. And they would pay me on the side. So on average, every semester, I would have maybe 6 or 7 students that I would be helping through. Some I would take in batches. Some would have one-on-one classes. The one-on-one classes were slightly more of a premium to batch classes, and I would assist them in that regard. And that's how I would pay off that balance of the 50%.
That's amazing to have that foresight and be like, okay, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to get clients. I'm not even sure how you got clients. So you then get out of college, you start with MTN eventually. You started out as an app engineer. And fast forward a few years, you're CEO in your early 30s. How did you manage that? What did you do that made you stand out?
So I'll be very clear and candid. There is a mindset that I had that I probably still have. And to the extent that it has helped me is quite immense. And that is to live your life as though nobody owes you anything, but like you owe everyone everything. Okay? I worked and have worked with no entitlement. I worked really, really hard from day one. And I worked backward from purpose. And one of the things that I told myself going into that building the first time was one day I'll be a CEO. And I would get there by force, by fire. And what was very critical was alignment to ensure that I always added value where I was. But to add value, you must first understand what value is in whatever environment you've been placed in. So for every job that I had, value and its definition was very critical to understand on day one. So for example, being an application engineer, I had to make sure that applications were running at all time. Okay. And I reported into an applications manager, and his responsibility was to make sure that the uptime on the apps that we used to support was north of 99%. And that was 15 years ago. Most platforms was semi-manual. It means I had to ensure that I'm servicing caches, I am servicing the apps themselves, running updates frequently, and so on and so forth. And make myself so relevant to the process that when I'm not there, for any reason I am sick or I'm on leave or I'm unavailable, my absence was indeed felt. And every time that is the case, your environment will need you. But when you make yourself dispensable, oftentimes than not, is when people find themselves either stagnant or not growing. I had to make sure that I was always relevant, Zam. And that normally comes when you go over and above what even the requirement is. I have a saying that you must do what is needed, and then when what is needed is not enough, you must then do what is required. And that was me growing up in every step. It were the leaders that I reported into who always put me in more critical positions. It's being in an environment where people are like, look, in order for us to move from point A to point B, the only person who would assist us get there is Komba. And then I also had a little secret charm, and this charm still works today, is at every time you move up, and this is spiritual, it's got nothing to do with being technical, it's got nothing to do with being the smartest or the brightest in the room. This is spiritual. Is that me and God have got this contract where he has said that every time I move up, I must pull others as I rise. So as soon as I moved one level up, I would look for an opportunity to bring somebody along one step higher. And believe it or not, every time I've moved into a position and I haven't pulled somebody else up, I've been stagnant in that position. Every time I help somebody move up, I move up too. It's just spiritual. And it's the contract that I have with God. I pull others as I rise.
That was actually going to be one of my follow-up questions, because you've spoken about making yourself indispensable. And I was wondering how then one manages that in terms of making yourself stand out as the individual and also being a team player. How do you make those things work in tandem?
That is the only way, is that you are nothing and nothing without a good team. And in order for you to thrive in any position that you sit in, before you even understand what is technically required, make sure that you are structured around the right type of people. Even Jesus himself, when he came on earth, one of his most critical missions was to form a team of disciples. And he did not achieve anything without that team. Albeit being their leader, they are the ones that put him where he needed to be. He would not have ascended to heaven even without Judas Iscariot, even without Peter denying him 3 times. So your squad will not always be made of gems. Sometimes there will be those that will test you, but that is all part of the process. So forming a good team was very critical to the story.
Lovely. So you spoke about understanding what value is for your role and delivering that value. How did you get to understand what value was? So is it like day one, are you initiating a conversation with your supervisor, or is it something you're reading, or are you looking at reading things between the lines? Because some things in the corporate space, unfortunately, may not be so obvious, especially when you are starting out and maybe a lower level person. Even as you grow in your role, some things may not be so obvious. So what was your approach to actually understanding what matters in your respective roles?
So, to be very honest with you, it comes in very specific forms. It's understanding what is the mandate. Normally in corporate, ultimately, the mandate is to move the organization forward by fixing problems. There were no problems, would not be jobs. So you have to understand in the organization, what is the goal? Where is this organization from a vision perspective trying to go? If the vision is not defined, then let's start by defining that vision as a collective. What are we trying to achieve? So I would go to the basics. And for MTN those days, what was very critical was acquisition of customers. We wanted to really bring digitization to the countries where we operated in. So for Zambia, it was making sure that we operated in all the 10 provinces and we kept the lights on in all those 10 provinces. That's why our slogan is everywhere you go. And from wherever I sat is how would I then add value where that is concerned. Now I'm CEO of mobile money. It means in every 10 province, someone should be able to deposit into their wallet and carry out transactions. So how am I adding to that on a daily basis? And I'm sure you've worked long enough to know that sometimes you can be working and be completely off tangent to the goal. So you almost have to reaffirm that every day, that what I'm touching today, is it really speaking into the ultimate goals of the organization? And reaffirming that and redesigning that and reestablishing that is what then becomes critical. It's making sure that the main thing remains the main thing and redefining that for the team to make sure that they are on board with the main thing. It's building trackers, documents that reaffirm what is most critical that the team must be focused on. nothing frustrates teams more than them scampering in different directions. It's normally misconstrued and misinterpreted as a lack of support of one another because people are pushing different agendas. Your main critical responsibility as a leader is to ensure that the main thing remains the main thing.
I'm going to ask you a seemingly cliche question, but it's actually not a cliche question in this context. The question is, what is your leadership style? And I am going to preface this because over your career journey, it's something that I've been keenly observing and interested in because you seem to have a way of getting your team to really buy into, I guess, what we've just discussed, the mission, getting your team to believe in what you're doing, even when it seems unconventional. And there was a time before you were CEO, I think you were a manager at the time. I bumped into someone we both know. And at the time they worked on your team. And I said, oh, how is it going? How is working with Komba? And this person basically said, no, Komba is really good. They spoke very highly of you. They spoke about how brilliant you were from the technical sense and also from a leadership perspective. And I found that interesting because they spoke so highly of you as a leader, but they were very close to you in age. It's someone who's a peer and they're comfortable with being led by you. So I am genuinely asking, what is your leadership style?
Thanks for that question. And I'm humbled by whoever would have said something like that about me. I think that the description of my leadership style that I get from my team, because looking at myself in the mirror, they are my mirror. They are the lens through which I see the organization. I'm a people person. I deliver and drive organizations through people. And I believe that the only way to move an organization forward is to look after people and not the customers before the people. You look after your people will look after your customers. Looking after people is not only about creating space for them, but it's also about calling them out and bringing them into reflection of who they really are. It's assisting them to bring out their highest potential. And sometimes that can be very tough on people. Okay. So I have one of my most amazing members of my team who is leaving my team, our CFO. And we had a little get together 2 days ago at my home and she was reflecting on her 3-year journey. And in her parting remarks, she said, there was a time when I thought, my God, this man doesn't like me, because he's really leaving me to my vices. He can clearly see that I am drowning here. And I come to him and I'm like, how do I get myself out of this? And he tells me, you have the solution for this thing. And I know you're going to be able to get yourself out of this thing. Just go back and dig a little deeper. And I walked out of your office and I thought to myself, he must really hate my guts. What kind of a leader is this? And when I got to my desk and I started to dig deep into my assignment and my work, I eventually did come up with that solution. You came to me and you reaffirmed my solution. And I told her, I said, your solution wasn't actually all that great, but...
Oh my God. Komba, please.
But the solution was your solution. And you had reached a point in your career that it was important for you to make mistakes. And they had to be your mistakes so that you can learn from your mistakes. And the truth is that it's Anna Wintour is one of my biggest inspirations from a leadership perspective. She's chief editor at Vogue. And she says, everyone should get sacked at least once. It forces you to look at yourself. It's important for you to have setbacks because that is the reality of life. Perfection does not exist. So if I had aided her question and given her the answer in my office, she would not know how to fail because there would always be a cushion for her. So yes, she came up with a solution. Yes, it wasn't the greatest of solutions, but it was her solution. And in her leadership journey, she needed to own both her wins and her failures. And when she brought me that solution, as a leader, it was then critical for me to coach her through her solutions to help her get to her ultimate optimum potential. But it only had to be through her lens. So it's a very delicate balance. It's watching your child fall and not lifting them up. You watch them fall, you watch them get up, even when it hurts you through your stomach to see them go through that fall. But they have to get up and they have to come back to you and you have to give them the guidance on how to fall better. Not that they should not fall. They will fall, but how do they fall better? Because adulting is learning how to fail quick and get up quick. It's not the lack of failure or falling down. Because the lesson of falling down is critical to your growth. And that's the lesson in life. That sometimes you're going to be able to do work and it's not your best work, and when it's been proven it's not your best work, the responsibility of leaders is to guide you along the way of getting up quick when you fall. So the art of falling is very critical to one's development and one's leadership. And so that's my leadership style. I'm a very big people person. I believe sincerely, Zamiwe, that part of my assignment in life is to help other people discover their purpose. And so to hear her beautifully speak last week and say, you helped me along this journey by becoming a much tougher CFO, a much more astute and confident CFO. I thought she was going to say, you left me to my own vices, you never liked me. But no, she was like, this is what I needed. I needed to be brought to my own reflection, to my own growth. So that's part of what it requires to be a formidable leader. And that's pretty much my leadership style.
So it sounds like you give people the space to figure themselves out, even if they feel like you're letting them drown. You're like, You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
You're still watching from the sidelines. You can still see them, right? But you still make sure that they have space to make mistakes. There is no innovation without mistakes.
And I think that's so important because so many of us are afraid of making mistakes. A, because it sucks to make a mistake. And B, if you have a leader who is not tolerant of mistakes, oh my goodness, anxiety is through the roof. So what's been your biggest career mistake or leadership mistake?
That's a very, very good one. I think that along my journey, I have made many mistakes and I've learned from many. One of them was not realizing soon enough that micromanagement was toxic to work environments. And in the beginning of my leadership, because us millennials were raised from a point of lack, I used to be so afraid to fail, be so afraid to let things be that I taught people that the consequence of not doing good work is failure. No, I should have been leading even then from a point of abundance. A critical example is when we grew up, we're told if you don't go to school, you suffer. We're not told if you go to school, you can be exceptionally amazing. There was always a consequence to our action. So in the early stages of my leadership journey, I led from a point of consequence, always making the consequences very clear before what the greatness of what my people would be like. And so it gave me very short-term results. I would get these highly engaged teams that at the core were very frustrated, were not motivated, were not disciplined. But then when I learned that it is very critical to lead teams from points of abundance, to teach them of the possibilities that could be if they were in full alignment with their authenticity from a potential perspective, I then got more sustainable results. I got more engaged results. I got more candid results where my team was concerned. My team were now more confident to walk into my office and tell me I've made a mistake. My team were confident to challenge me. My team were confident to say no. My team were also confident to say yes. Because as a leader, you must be very afraid when all your team say is yes. There's no one walking into your office telling you, this is not going to work. This we cannot do. This is not the route we should be taking. You are a toxic leader.
Damn. Toxic. That's a strong word.
Yeah, but the work environment is full of them, unfortunately.
It's true. And it comes back to that saying, which goes, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their leaders. And it's interesting, you say toxic, because so many people, when you say the word work or when they think of work, it's synonymous with toxicity. When you talk about micromanaging is a very interesting thing in that it's counterintuitive to what you're trying to do, because you'll be micromanaging people, threatening them with a stick because you want to get a certain result. But actually, it's the opposite. And then when the opposite starts happening, you start getting more frustrated and want to micromanage them even more. And until you take that step back and you're like, all right.
Give them the space to actually thrive and also allow the possibility of failure. Obviously, the delicate balance with that is you must still hold people accountable to their mistakes as a leader. And by no means should you dictate their outcomes. No, they are there to flourish. They are also there to bring their most authentic selves. So if you dropped off this call now and called any member of my team, Zamiwe, from the janitor to the CEO, and asked them, what is the opening statement when you meet Komba for the first time on your first day of your work? And I dare you to do that, to ask anyone member of my team. The first thing that I say to the person that joins my team on day one, after I say hello, is bring your most authentic self. This is why we hired you.
Wow. Okay. That's so different, Komba.
But it's what I say to anyone who joins. And you must see the sigh of relief when you validate who they are on day one. Because when they walk into a new environment, they feel as though they need to conform. Because they always ask me these weird questions. What are your expectations of me? I don't know what my expectations of you are. I haven't even met you yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want you to bring who you are. We've hired you to this job, but it's you we've hired. So the question should kind of be the other way around. I mean, I'm curious to see what you bring to the table as Zamiwe. Are we going to experience a lot more jokes suddenly? Are we going to experience a lot more seriousness? Are we going to experience a lot more color? Or do you exist only in black and white? What's your flavor? So you should see their sigh of relief, because then they are validated just as human beings. Forget them being employees, just them being they are validated.
Amazing. Did you enjoy today's episode? You did? I thought you would. Which is why you should share it with a friend, family member, or colleague who you think would find it valuable. Join us next week for a continuation of this discussion, where Komba runs us through his unique process for strategic planning. Just to give some context here, one of their strategic planning sessions was themed around an airline. I'll leave it there. Komba also speaks on why and how he walks the talk of supporting women in the workplace. And of course, this conversation wouldn't be complete without us touching on how he manages to merge his vibrant and authentic social media presence with the very serious role of CEO. Oh, and he also explains why he believes the acronym CEO stands for Chief Energy Officer. I look forward to catching you on next week's episode. You can connect with Komba on LinkedIn at Komba Malukutila and on Instagram at Komba Lume. Of course, remember to follow us at The Kind Regards on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I wish you an authentically positive week ahead. Kind regards, Zamiwe.